Okay guys, so this is the Ruger American Ranch and 300 Blackout, the factory 10 round magazine. I'm shooting S&B, Cellar and Bullet, 124 grain or 123 grain practice full metal jacket. Really quick, a Leopold Mark AR 1-4 illuminated scope, Kaw Valley Precision Linear Comp, a Magpul Rifleman loop sling, Tally low rings, and that's about it. So these are my first shots. I'm not really fluent with the bolt action. This is kind of my first bolt action that I've shot, at least in a while. So we'll see how it works. It's not sighted in. I did a rough bore mount, but we're about 25 yards away. So we'll see how this does. Ready? So that was the first 10 rounds, and much to my surprise, it's pretty much on. I'm going to fine tune it a little bit, but I just had some concrete blocks at 25 yards and it knocked him down. The initial impressions about this is not only is it lightweight, it's lightweight, but it doesn't feel like a toy, kind of like a 22. It feels solid yet light. It's short overall length, I appreciate. There's literally no recoil. We also have a 20 gauge semi-auto shotgun, and this produces, and this is only one person's opinion, but this produces a lot less recoil than even that. So it would be a suitable maybe first deer gun for youth or for smaller statured people that don't want a rifle with a lot of recoil. Okay, so I have two 12x18 silhouette type targets, and we're going back to 25 yards. I haven't zeroed this. I was just shooting at some concrete blocks earlier. So I'm going to just aim for the X and see what happens. I put two above each other because if I hit here and I see a hole down here, then I know I have to come up. So to start, I'll just aim right around this X. So we're back at 25 yards, and I just wanted to show this quickly. This is a Lancer 20 round AR-15 mag. That's what it ships with. And you can see the 20 round isn't all that much longer. Still for hunting, the 10 rounds just a little more handy. But when you're shooting, if you needed to, you could kind of hold on right there. It also fits 30 rounds, 60 rounds, any type of AR mag. But anything past 20 round, it just kind of looks silly on this rifle. So again, 25 yards. I think it picked him up. I was aiming here, and that's roughly 4 inches high. These turrets here are calibrated at 100 yards. I believe they're 0.1 mil. One click is 0.1 mil, so 1 mil at 100 yards is, I'll figure out the math, zero it, and we'll take a few more shots and see if we're close. Okay, so I was roughly about 3.5 inches high at 25 yards. At 1 mil, if I'm remembering correctly, 1 mil is 3.6 inches. So at 25 yards, a mil is a quarter of that. So you can do the math if you want. I went 40 clicks, which will be 4 mils, which makes sense because let's just see what happens. Good. So again, I did roughly 40 clicks, which on this would equal 4 mils, because we roughly at 25 yards had to go down about 3.5 inches. Okay, let's go see where that shot landed. So that's the shot I just made. And again, that's roughly, let's call that about 2.5 inches. So I have to come 2.5 inches this way. So I'll make that adjustment and then I think I'll be right on. Okay, so then we had to go left about 2.5 inches. I didn't have a ruler. So on this, I adjusted it 3 mils to the left. So that's 3 mils at 100 yards. Again, I'm not the best at math, but let's say that's around 2.5 inches at 25 yards. So let's see where that hit. So that's the hit there. It's close enough for me to that X. So now maybe I'll just do some shots up here, kind of in a rapid succession, and we'll see what happens. So now, before we walk down there, I'm just going to aim at the lower target. There's no holes on that. And again, I'll just aim for that X right in the middle. Good? Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's go see what that looks like. So here, so right up here, these were the standing, just the very quick shots in this general area. And again, we're not going for maximum accuracy. I was kind of going more for speed. From a standing position, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then down here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, all in this area. So what I'm seeing is the center of the group is maybe more this way. So I might have over adjusted. So I might adjust that back just a little bit. But for me, that's pretty good accuracy from a sitting position in kind of rapid succession. I'm just going to try a few prone. 30 round mag is a little high off the ground, so I just have a chunk of wood here and we'll see what happens. Okay, so that was 30, 20, and 10, so 60 rounds, which is quite a bit for a bolt action. This barrel is smoking a little bit, very hot to the touch. And I say that's a lot for a standard bolt action, but it adds a lot of fun when it takes, especially 30 round detachable mags. Okay, so down there we have some new targets. They're just your 5 small bullseye white and orange targets. I have 2 of them, and just because this isn't a bench gun, this is more of a utility gun, hunting gun, I'm going to do maybe like 2 or 3 from standing, 2 or 3 from kneeling, maybe some from prone, just to see what that's like. So again, we're using 30 rounds. So we have 30 rounds in here, and these ones happen to be hollow points. I think they're MagTech or S&B hollow points. So let's see how this goes. So I'm going to let this cool a little bit. We have a few other firearms that we're shooting today, so I'm going to let this cool a little bit more. And we have about 200 more rounds that we'll probably put through this today. But my initial impressions, at least in 2019, the bolt action isn't super conducive to rapid precision shooting. But with not that much trigger time behind this, both me and her, I was filming when she was shooting, and she has even less experience behind a bolt action than I do, and she was able to keep up a pretty solid pace. This Ruger American Action, I get the Ruger Americans more of their budget line, but I've looked at a few different bolt actions, and I have to say, even compared to high-end ones, this bolt is very smooth and very, it's easy, but sometimes with bolt actions, if it's too easy and you have a lot of bolt play, when you're trying to jam it home, it'll kind of bind up and you have to reset, and it's just really sloppy. But with this one, it's really smooth, really quick. Overall, the rifle is lightweight, but I don't feel that it's too light for practical shooting at, close distances. You could even turn this into like a bench rifle if you wanted. You could put a bipod, you could put a higher power scope. But what I was going after in this rifle is a short handy plinking rifle, short range hunting rifle, just a general purpose, maybe a varmint, like a hog gun or a coyote gun, a deer gun. And the last thing, before I close this video up, I wanted to talk about my 25 yard zero. That's not common in hunting rifles, at least up here, and growing up we would always put a 100 yard zero. The reason I'm putting a 25 yard zero is a lot of people don't realize that whenever you zero a rifle, you have two ranges in which it's zero, because that bullet is arcing. So an easy way to think about this is when you throw a football, you don't throw it right to the receiver, you throw it kind of above his head. So when it gets to him, it's roughly about 5 to 6 feet off the ground so he can catch it. And it's not a perfect example, but when you throw it, there's a point right around the front line where that ball is about 6 feet high and it's arcing up and coming back down. So what that allows is with a 25 yard zero, it's right on, and then the bullet's going to go up in the air a little bit. That's called trajectory. And with this specific rifle and this specific round, the 300 Blackout, when it comes back down, it's going to be dead on at 150 yards. So it's a 25 yard zero, but it's also 150 yard zero. And anywhere between muzzle distance and 150 yards, the bullet's never but a few inches from what you're aiming at. So 150 yards for a standard rifle is kind of short distance. But as you can see, like the woods around me is very similar to hunting conditions. Like this, a lot of people deer hunt around here, and most of where I live is very densely forested. And of the few deer that I've shot, the closest one was about 20 yards and the farthest one was somewhere around 100 yards, but none of them were extremely long distance. So the reason I like that 25 yard zero is for short range. Maybe you have to use it for pest control, and for 25 yards is a very common distance to shoot a deer at where I live. But then also, if you do need to stretch it out at 150 yards, you're going to be right on. And even at 175 to 200 yards, you're only going to drop a few inches. So with a 25 yard zero, you pretty much are pretty close between muzzle distance and 200 yards. So like always, if you enjoyed this video, you can go back to my homepage, watch some of my current videos. This isn't going to be the only video talking about this rifle. And let me know in the comments down below if you want specific reviews on the sling, the muzzle device, the scope rings, or any of the accessories I put on this. I'm able to do individual reviews on those. But like always, this is probably only part 1 or part 2 of a multi-part series that I'll be putting out over the next 6 months to 1 year.